Hello, everybody, and welcome to this conversation between myself. I'm Brooke McNamara, and I'm here with my lovely friend and teaching partner, Lisa Gibson. You want to say hi, Lisa?
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. And we're here to have a conversation about an upcoming retreat that we're leading online this Sunday, April 10th. And in order to energize and kind of bring out more, we've invited our dear friend Gabe Wilson, who is a Dharma brother and friend, and we all practice Zen together in the same community. And we're just going to have a conversation about what this retreat is for. Why are we taking time to sit still and practice connection with each other when there's so many other things we could be doing? Why is this important to us? And in particular, for this one on Sunday, we're going to be focusing on the theme of grief and letting go, as well as compassion. And so we want to just explore all of that and give you a sense of our structure and just where our hearts are, really, so that you get a flavor of if this is right for you. So I'm gonna pass it over to Gabe. He's going to be kind of interviewing or facilitating the three of us. So Gabe, thanks for being here. Welcome.
Totally. Thank you for having me. It's always a total pleasure to play with both of you. I think, as a way of kicking off, I'm actually moved to share a quote you shared with me, Brooke, related to the theme of grief, letting go, and compassion activity.
Mm-hmm.
And it just struck me. And so maybe from that point of view of sharing just your hearts with the potential people that may be attracted, let me share this quote from Francis Weller that you shared. Grief keeps the heart flexible, fluid, and open to others. That's from his book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow. I'm curious about that quote, Brooke. Maybe we can start there. How does that quote speak to your sense of grief, and why did that quote come to you from me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start by saying, being with you both and just hearing you read those words, I just feel my heart more.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of immediately feel a tenderness of just the intimacy that we have cultivated from over a decade of being really deeply in Zen practice together, and how much I care about that tenderness and that preciousness with you two specifically, and the rest of our Sangha and our teacher, of course. But it's really specific for me right now. Like, I feel a different kind of tenderness and intimacy with you, Lisa, and you, Gabe, than I might in another context. And so that is related to the fact that we have sat still on cushions for many, many hours in the Zendo, and we've cooked meals together and worked the land together. And Gabe, you've taken care of our kids and played with them. And that intimacy cultivated through rigorous practice, as well as work and life together, might be one of the most precious and meaningful gifts in my life. And also I can feel the ache of what it might mean to lose either of you, or the inevitability of that I will, or that you will lose me. And so all that arises kind of as one big movement in me. And I'm so grateful for all of it. The achy feeling in my heart makes me think of Maizumi Roshi is, I'll say to those of you who are watching, is a teacher in our lineage who brought Zen teachings from Japan to the States, and was incredibly, educated and practiced in Zen. And yet when a student asked him, why do you practice? He simply answered, to make my heart tender. And I would say to anyone who's interested in coming, that's kind of the heart of this, is that there's so much to be upset about in the world and in our lives, and yet we can guard a portion of our days to slow down and feel our deeper nature and our unconditioned nature, and how that is shared with everything, and how there's a certain reliability and indestructibility in that, and yet an immense tenderness, because we just can't help but love all the ways that our deepest nature manifests, and the fact that like some of that is impermanent and will die. And so for me, selfishly, this retreat is going to force me to slow down and feel that in community with everybody, so that I don't get so busy that I skip over that precious tenderness. Because if I just follow habit and the surface movements of my life, I'll miss a lot of this deeper juice that comes from slowing down, sitting still, connecting deeply, and also playing together. So that makes my heart more flexible. When I come out of practice with other people that I love, I just notice that I am more flexible and more available for others, for my kids, students, elders. And that matters to me, that my heart is actually online and that it's flexible and tenderized. Yeah.
Thank you, Brooke.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That brings up a lot for me. And Lisa, before I say anything, let's go to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the tenderness just of like this right here, and our connection. And I think what, as you were speaking, Brooke, like there was part of what I think what I love about Zen practice is that this there's less of a of talk about compassion as a thing to try to become like more compassionate activity. And there's this deep, I think, belief in compassion as a natural activity. And when I think this is where for me it's grief, and it's also the act of like when we slow down and when we sit still and when we meditate, we sort of like get a glimpse of what's actually happening in our own, systems, our own bodies. Like there's this moment where we turn our attention inward. It's like I know so much of my life is turned outward, and my attention is focused on the what's happening in the outside world, whether that's like my work and the things I need to do, or my kids, or making meals. And there's something about this moment of sitting on my cushion and getting still that's like, oh, I turn my attention inward, and like literally let go of like the need to get it anywhere, do anything, be anything other than what's happening right here.
Mhm.
And and in that move, like there's a way that grief comes up. Now it's not only grief, but there's a way that it's this letting go kind of allows like the fullness of what's there to arise. and and that is what makes my heart tender. And so then what I how I behave when I slow down and I really attune to my own heart and my body and my mind is there's a different quality that I relate to the world with. And I think so if I kind of, our themes of this particular retreat of grief and letting go, and that this natural activity of compassion is like this fundamental trust that compassion arises when we just let ourselves feel.
Mhm.
Um, and I think there's so much like right now, probably there always has been, but I can feel like there's a lot of grief at multiple scales. And even in our little community and Sangha of practitioners, of people who sit with us weekly, we lost one of the members who one of our Sangha who had been sitting with us for a long time. And there's like, so grief is like close in, but there's like this gift in what it has sparked, and kind of the intimacy that's arisen, I think, because of that. When when we like just allow ourselves to let go and feel the fullness of what's there. So I think that the hope for our time together is that we can just inquire, like literally just get still, and we'll move too, but we'll also be like really feeling what's alive for us, and what is it that we can let go of, and how does that serve us, and what happens um, when we do, and maybe why that's so important, I think, particularly right now.
Mhm.
Mm. Beautifully too. I'm having a little FOMO because I can't make it on Sunday.
Fear of missing
But
out.
Darn.
I fear of missing out. I have to let that go.
Yeah.
But what I'm touching into is actually I know both of you and have the just distinct honor of knowing both of you and knowing what kinds of spaces you can create. And as you're both sharing, and Brooke, particularly as you're invoking the lives that we've lived, and I've seen your kids grow. In fact, I met you both when they had just been born or were in the process of. And it's just so sweet to have my life and knowing you track with the birth of your children.
Mhm.
And there's something about being with you in practice, seeing you as mamas, being made into an uncle, chosen uncle, that um, just wakes my heart up. And I can feel just as your presence, like just the impermanence of things become more heightened
Mhm.
when my heart is lighting up, when I'm falling in love with you both
Mhm.
more and more. Just the fact that it's ending is becoming more and more clear.
Mhm.
Not as an abstraction, but I just really do feel, even when we part and say goodbye, there's just this like, oh, sense of it ending, and just that life is ending, it's impermanent. And so there's something about, Lisa, what you're saying that gives me a hit of the space that y'all are creating, which is, you said, feeling the fullness of what is here. And when we allow ourselves to do that, I feel like our hearts just have to crack open
Mhm.
because there's so much beauty, there's so much pain here too. But it's all fleeting. And if we form a relationship with the here and now, I just feel like we're bound to fall in love with it in some kind of wild way.
Yeah.
So just like presencing that. And the other thing that I would give a shout out to you both, it's kind of a wild thing to offer in these times, you know, like a refuge retreat. Like there's so much to take refuge from.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of like a radical act, I feel, especially in a culture that's kind of moving towards fixing things or eliminating the discomfort,
Mhm.
which in a way bypasses maybe the actual feeling of grief.
Mm.
And what can that do to the heart and how can it shape it? So I just feel like you're creating a really powerful space,
Mhm.
a really sweet space.
Mhm.
And it's precisely that very thing that will come to an end as well in your
Yeah.
time-bound workshop. And that's the whole, that's beautiful. I find that really captivating. So I just wanted to say that. And I'm curious if that brings up anything.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, it brings up a lot, but I had this, yeah, we were talking just before we started recording about, yeah, like how long we've known you. And my Lila, my daughter, was a year old when you met her, and you were like drawing, or maybe she was a year and a half, and I was pregnant with my second baby. Um, and now you've got a shared Spotify playlist with her. So there's like, it's like, oh yeah, things don't stay the same. And I look at these photos of, her, and I think of you and your the newness of the practice. And there's like something so sweet that like I grieve that that isn't the thing that's now. Like I actually can't hold on to the beauty and also the suffering, like there's like the suffering moves, but yet it's like when I kind of touch into what's here, it's like, oh, there's like the beauty and the grief kind of get mixed up together. um and so I think there's like this, the radical act of maybe not needing to do anything about the present conundrum of this world, which is, both my life's work is about, in so many ways solving, big social, you know, challenges and more social justice, and yet it's unresolvable in so many ways. And so
Mhm.
there's this way that, um I don't know who said it, but like, can we live with life and death on our shoulders? Like, if we can we there's something about, if we have life and death, and in each moment, how does it change how I meet this moment? It's like to really, know that those things that we love the most are actually inevitably going to change and shift, and we will have to let go. But
Mhm.
because of that, the impetus to be more fully present, it's like, if I can really soak up this conversation, and, like, there's it this is what is here, and there's something so rich in this moment, and so I can long for what was, or I can hope for, I can let go of the things that have been, or I can look at the world in this moment. I can feel like the deep suffering that's in the Ukraine, but it's not to be avoided then. It's like my heart can kind of metabolize it, and actually the impact is that I just get I'm more here. Like, I'm actually more fully present to what's here. I don't shy away from it. It's like when we really
Mhm.
invite that opportunity, that our refuge can only be in this moment. There actually isn't anywhere else to settle. But that doesn't mean it's not difficult sometimes, and that doesn't mean that it looks like one thing. But
Mhm.
there's this sort of possibility when we return over and over to our lives, really. And that when we do that in community, and that's part of, I think, what we're really trying to create through this offering, is that it's not just that I'm coming to sit by myself, but actually we're leaning into each other.
Mhm.
And we need to do that in this moment. We really need to lean into spaces where we actually can take refuge in ourselves and our true nature, but that it's in community with others, um where we can kind of find that little extra support when we can't when it's not available right here. And that our, really, community is in so many ways where we get to experience this kind of intimacy.
Mhm. Yeah, I keep feeling how, so we have the Sangha that the three of us are part of with our teacher, Diane Hamilton, and then Lisa and I have a sort of mini Sangha that's been growing over a few years. And I keep feeling, Lisa, with our Sangha, that we hold art of meditation offerings like this retreat for. There's a way that just every time these folks show up, it doesn't matter what's happening. Sometimes there's a lot of joy and playfulness, and sometimes there's a lot of tears, and sometimes there's other stuff or a mixture of those things. But if we show up with all of it together, um, the refuge is undeniable. And it's like, I don't even want to try to put words to, like, what is the refuge that we're offering. I could try to name it, but it's more like when we show up and we reveal what's going on and the fullness of our hearts in this moment, like you said, Lisa, that the refuge is only always right here. I I can always see people, myself included, become um, more relaxed, more radiant, more resilient, more present, and it's like we don't have to talk about what the refuge is. There's something ever present, that just being together and being real together with all the textures and layers of what's going on, that don't have to be avoided but don't have to be indulged, and as we share them and metabolize them together, something wakes up together, and it feels so good. And it's like, it is always here, even when I'm alone, of course, or even when I'm in nature with more than human beings, or other than human beings. But there is something about being with other human beings and being real together, and that's what the meditation is for, and that's what everything we're designing is, to just help us be more real together. And then our true nature simply arises, whatever you would like to call that. And that refuge is the deepest it's not a reference point, but it's something reliable when all reference points fall away. So that's what we want to offer folks. And then in particular, we are tuning to the unique things about our regular practitioners. And what we notice in our regular group is that grief is arising. Yes, we lost one of our members. Suddenly he died and we didn't get to say goodbye. And he is just one of the most magnificent human beings I've ever known. And it was such a heart-shattering thing to experience, but it was so beautiful to experience it together. And we're all way more bonded. And since then, more layers of grief are coming up for these friends who come to these events. And so we're trusting that if this is what's happening in our small group of regulars, that other folks who would like to join must also have, any human alive today has something to grieve. So it doesn't have to be a big grief. It can be small things like my child is growing up and, changing, and that there's grief there, or whatever there is to let go. If we can actually do that and feel that, we'll be more available for the next moment.
Nice. What comes up for me, I'm just sitting kind of in the seat of a very desirous participant.
Sweet.
But I'm getting a hit of, you're actually asking something of me. Like, this isn't for anybody. I feel like I have to show up in a particular way or leave something at the door. I'm not sure how to frame it, but I'm curious, what are you asking of me, or what's the agreement, or what's the invitation that I can step into if I want to really find refuge with you?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I love it. And I think you're right. There are many spaces that are out there. And so I think this is a space for those who listen, or see that are like where there's something inside that goes that kind of points you in this direction. I think there's like almost like the internal compass of where, what being called or being, there's something in what we're offering that has a yes. So I think the invitation is really wide open to anybody who wants to come and practice for 5 hours and explore this real question around what does it mean to come home to yourself, and how are grief, letting go, and the natural activity of compassion important in our own lives together. And so I think that it's just to come in wholeheartedly, and for it to be a yes, and to be available to what arises. And we have a agenda. Maybe Brooke, you could share a little taster of that, but we've got a plan, but it will emerge because we're co-creating the space together. So we want folks to arrive knowing that they're active participants in what we're co-creating together, and we're creating a container in which our experience will unfold. But if you're wholeheartedly showing up into and holding these same questions, then it's the right place, and it for you. And if you don't have something else happening already on Sunday.
Yeah. So I the only thing I would add to what you just shared, Lisa, is the willingness to be changed by our time together, which we also ask of our own selves, because if we do surrender to the possibility of grief or joy or any real experience, or the possibility of just waking up again and again to the vastness of our being, anything that we really are here for is going to change us. So we are asking you to be willing to leave a slightly different being than you come in as, which takes some courage and willingness to take a risk, but Lisa and I care deeply, and we do our very best to hold a, you know, a safe and loving and kind space. And usually the people that show up are just wonderful and very caring. So, you know, along those lines, sometimes it's helpful to know what the structure is that you're stepping into, like, what are we going to do? And without going into too much detail, maybe I'll put it in the notes below this video, but we will have multiple sitting periods, which you can have no experience with meditation or tons, and we will give enough guidance that you'll be good to practice meditation with us. And we'll also definitely start with a welcome and setting intentions and ground rules so that there's a strong foundation. Then we'll sit. We'll have a little bit of movement, but again, it's all levels. And I just realized I've been looking down. I'm trying to look at the viewer. Well, it's all levels, so very inclusive for however your body is that day. And then we'll have some discussion time and some teaching time, which is always one of my favorite parts. And then a break for a meal. And people are in different time zones, so it might be lunch, it might be dinner, it might be a snack. And then we always have a little time outside. So you'll have time to go for a walk and do like a walking meditation outside, get some fresh air away from the screen. And then we'll come back and do more sitting meditation. And during that final sitting meditation, there's an opportunity to meet one-on-one with Lisa and me in breakout groups. So if you have like more personal questions you want to ask, there's a chance for that. And it, you know, it flows according to what's happening in the moment and who's there, but that's the basic structure.
Right on, yeah.
So I think we're out of time, unless do either of you want to say any last thing that's on your heart, mind?
Yeah, I think the only thing is, well, thank you to you, Gabe. Thanks for taking the time to just be in conversation. And I think it's really these kind of spaces that we want to create is actually an opportunity to go deeper. You know, we're going to sit, but we're also doing practice together, and we're also in conversation as part of our practice and as a way that we can find refuge. So this is, you know, this is what we're doing here is also what we're going to be doing together through these retreats. Um, so thanks for being willing, and yeah, I just feel like tremendous gratitude for you both.
Mhm.
Yeah, ditto. Yeah, and based on what you're sharing, you know, I think it's going to be hard to. There's a little mystery which I appreciate. An invitation to be wholehearted. There's the invitation to come in being willing to be transformed, and that transformation is, I think, part of the mystery. But it sounds like a really awesome invitation and a rare one, honestly. Particularly in our lives that are so inundated with different offerings and distractions and whatnot. So to just find refuge with you both is an honor and a privilege, and I'll definitely join the next one. I'd love to be part of this community.
We would always love to have you.
Yeah.
Always.
So awesome. Yeah. And so thank you, Gabe. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you to all of you who've listened to this. And yeah, may it be of service to you and all the people in your life and all the beings that you touch.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you, guys.